Can you believe it? We are all the way back here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. This is the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate, and it has been a long offseason, but I am so glad to be talking college football with you like we do each and every Sunday. And what a day of storylines we're going to get to throughout the show. We've got Texas A&M hosting Notre Dame. What a win for the Irish. We've got Georgia and Clemson to kick it all off. Miami going into the swamp and making a statement. Plus, how about this? For the first time in 17 years, there was a new head coach at Alabama. Michigan coming off a national championship. Everybody leaves. Sharon Moore in. They had some unexpected issues yesterday with Fresno State. But all in all, it is just so good to be back here with you on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel because there are so many storylines to get to. Why? Because I've said it already. This is going to be a season of change in college football. 12-team playoff, new rules, no divisions, realignment. It all gets us started here on Labor Day week. And by the way, my favorite weekend of the year in college football, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yep, we're going to talk about all of it. And no better place to check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate, than where Paul just came back from SEC Nation. His show was out at the Swamp for the big one between Miami and Florida. So, Paul, I want to check in with the Florida Gators to start the season. Now, here's what I'll say. We came into the season knowing Florida had the toughest schedule in the country. What we didn't anticipate was after an entire offseason, months to get ready, and the atmosphere at the Swamp yesterday, for that to happen to the Gators against Miami.
Yeah, I usually like to get right to the point, but I want to just take us up to the kickoff yesterday because being in Gainesville, Matt, on Friday, positivity, talking to students, we're not happy with the record, but we're behind Billy Napier. Then the zenith of the afternoon came about 4 o'clock when I sat down with Scott Strickland, who hired, of course, Billy Napier and made the decision to fire Dan Mullen. And he was all in. He said you can't make changes every 3 years. We're in this thing for the long haul. We believe in Billy Napier. He's done things correctly. He's done things methodically, and we believe that Billy Napier will be here for a very long time. And I thought about that as the afternoon wore on, as the seats were emptying yesterday. And Matt, it just felt like the one thing that Billy Napier couldn't afford to do, he did. The credibility that he gained in the offseason, the goodwill, Tim Tebow telling me Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, that Billy Napier probably should be coach of the year with a 7 or 8 win season. It just seemed like it all went down the drain at the Swamp. And the question now is, can he put back the shattered pieces? Because at this point, every single week is going to be a referendum on Billy Napier's future. And that is for those who have not already written it off.
Yeah, to drain the swamp, pun intended there, with what happened yesterday. And Paul, that's a great point. Again, we've detailed Florida coming into this season, year 3 of Billy Napier, and the schedule that he has in front of him. I sit with a former Florida coach, Dan Mullen, every week. He knows the program as good as anyone, even going back to his days with Urban Meyer's offensive coordinator. And here, Dan Mullen coming into Saturday, when we were talking about it off air, and even I was talking at Galloway, there was legit belief, Paul, that not only would Florida come in and keep this game close and make it a fun watch, Mullen actually thought because of the Swamp and an offseason to prepare that Florida could beat Miami, not lose 41-17. There was belief that Florida could win this game.
Yeah, and listen, I realize when you go to Florida, that gives you a little more juice. But Chris Doering, who is a commentator, as you know, he was on our show Friday afternoon. He said Florida will not only win, but they will blow Florida out. I mean, it's one thing for Tim Tebow to get up in front of a couple thousand people and Gators win. Well, I mean, I live through that every week. So do you see it as well. But I mean, this was a legitimate analyst, not just saying my school is going to win. They're going to destroy that. That's how much optimism was going on. And, I know what people are saying today, and I'm trying to be rational and reasonable, which is not easy for me to do in the aftermath of really one of the worst beatdowns I've seen for a respected team at home in a setting like that. I mean, this wasn't a 6 or 8 touchdown differential.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was a very narrow, 1 or 2 3-point line. I mean, this was a game.
Yeah, and when it look, it either lends credence to those who are big on Miami coming into the season, saying Cam Ward's going to be the difference. The U's back. We're going to go to a college football playoff. Give them credit because it would have been easy for them to get trapped in the swamp yesterday and maybe get upset. But I did not expect that. And to your point, Samford's next, and then Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF. There was a little bit of a lull, but Paul, you did. Now, if you're Billy Napier, you did not want that to be how you started the season.
No, because I mean the math and most people are familiar with the schedule. I mean, there was only about 6 or 7 legitimate win possibilities anyway, and Miami was one of those. And now you every game now. I mean, forgetting Samford, that's the only sure win of the season. I mean, you have A&M coming in. Matt, I mean, we all saw the game Saturday night. They're a good team. They're not great, but they played with a really good team yesterday. And then you go to Mississippi State. I have no earthly idea, but you're on the road. And then here's the game that I think could really be devastating if he loses at home against UCF. I mean, they're a good team.
Yeah.
I mean, they're certainly capable of winning that game, and that's before you go to Tennessee and before you deal with Kentucky and then the gauntlet of Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida State, that endless stream of games which they really have no chance of winning.
Yeah, and look, you never want to start a season, and we do this now as we continue to check in with Paul Finebaum. We do this every year where we always ID a coach or two that could potentially be in the hot seat. It's just the way of the world in college football.
Yeah.
But what you don't want is you work all off season, as you said, to build up goodwill. And here we are in week 1. And now all of the attention is going to be on how do you get out of this? Are you starting DJ Lagway, the all everything true freshman? Is the Graham Mertz era done? Now we're picking and choosing and questioning everything going on in Gainesville when really we should be looking at the big picture of how you're continuing to build this program. Because Paul, as we both know, we talk about this all the time. Building a program doesn't happen overnight. Now it could and should with the transfer portal era, but I just don't know how much closer they are today than they were on day one.
Well, again, we may look back 4 months from now and go about Miami playing in the quarterfinals of the semi. I mean, sometimes you don't know what you're looking at the moment, but here it doesn't really change Florida's path. The goodwill gone, the momentum gone. The one thing Billy Napier has, based on everyone with whom I spoke, is DJ Lagway. If he is this superstar, and if Napier can grab a hold of him and ride through some turmoil and get to at least, I mean, what's a respectable record? 500 right now?
Yeah.
Maybe that there's a silver lining. And then you have a situation, you have an interim president there who's the former president, who greeted Napier on the field. I have no idea why he waited around to greet Napier. I wouldn't have gotten near the guy, but he figures he might as well. He's standing down there, and he will ultimately make that decision. And then, you know, where does Scott Strickland fit into this? A respected AD, but a guy who's on the clock now. And so you have all these circumstances. I mean, I forgot LSU was also on that schedule. I mean, they got playoff teams every week, with 1 or 2 exceptions. I mean, losing to I think A&M now becomes like the de facto season for him, because if you start off losing 2 games you were supposed to win, and 6-6 or 7-5 was predicated on maybe only losing 1 game in the first half to Tennessee on the road, which they will, then I mean it becomes desperate very quickly. The negativity cannot be stopped. And that's why I think it's so important to point out goodwill gone, positivity gone. And now every time Billy Napier stands in front of a microphone, as he did yesterday, you know, it's on me. Well, you better believe it's on you. You are now the #1 coach in college football on the hot seat. And we're only hours into the month of September.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten to finish my Sunday morning coffee after a long Saturday on Labor Day weekend before we get started with this. Also gone, the check-in as we check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate. Some other things I want to get to, Paul, because I have best laid plans, and now we're in coaching conversation, so it's kind of the natural segue. For the first time in 17 years, someone other than Nick Saban on the sidelines in Tuscaloosa, and Kalen DeBoer. We know Jim Harbaugh went off to the NFL, leaving Sharon Moore with bits and pieces of a Michigan team that shouldn't be ranked ninth in the country. They lost too much. It's no disrespect to Michigan. You won the national championship. Enjoy it. You're not the ninth best team in the country. They struggle with Fresno State, pulled away late. For your money, the debuts yesterday starting in Tuscaloosa with Kalen DeBoer. From where I sat, I mean, it looked pretty effective. There was some sloppiness, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. DeBoer was a home run for Alabama because he's an offensive guy that gets with a quarterback and some really talented freshman receivers that could use his acumen.
It was a pretty flawless beginning. And yeah, I mean, if you're watching it down by down, you're seeing things in the first half you don't like. And you're also, if you cover college football like we do, first game against Western Kentucky, and it doesn't make any difference. It's just a process. The fact Nick Saban was there may have been the biggest surprise to me. I mean, I kind of like figured Saban would show up when he had to, but he and Miss Terry. I mean,
maybe go bar hopping with McAfee or something.
I guess. I mean, I guess maybe he was just glad to get away from McAfee. The game pretty meaningless other than the fact that it's the first game. But I remember 17 years ago, I stood there. I was there until midnight against Western Carolina. I mean, these are moments in time, Matt, when you cover college football that you make note of, and we won't ever mention this game again.
Yeah, and the thing I do make note of is that there was actually delayed 6 minutes because of headset communication issues with Western Kentucky. So DeBoer had to wait a little longer to get his Alabama career started. And I like what Sharon Moore did last year as Michigan's interim when Jim Harbaugh kept getting in trouble. I think that he's going to have a hard time getting Michigan at the sustained level of success that Harbaugh did. He was left in a very precarious situation with all of the NCAA violations hanging around. The cupboard was not bare, but it was taken to the NFL. For me, this one's going to be a much tougher transition as a new head coach at Michigan.
Yeah, and the one thing you would rather not have is the eyes of the nation on you week 2 into the season, but that's exactly what he has.
Yeah.
With the Texas game. I mean, everybody will be there. There's not that much else going on this weekend, I don't think. So all the trailer shows will show up, all the attention at noon, and it's conversely, it's a great chance to say, okay, we're back. I mean, we're not back, but it's a continuum.
Sure.
But certainly the odds don't favor that.
Yeah, and in Texas, they rolled yesterday 52-0. Sark has that thing as good as it's going to get in terms of where he's got the foundation of Texas. Quinn Ewers looked great, 3 touchdown passes pretty quickly. Isaiah Bond comes in from Alabama. They had a great transfer portal haul. The great Arch Manning gets in. He threw a touchdown pass, ran for another. So they've got a Texas team coming in feeling good, where Michigan needed a late pick 6 to close out Fresno State 30-10. Elsewhere, you brought up A&M and Notre Dame. And Mike Elko, new head coach, takes over for the departed Jimbo Fisher, who said earlier this week, told Peter Burns it'd be kind of itching to get back in. If you paid me that kind of money, I would disappear forever to go away. But Mike Elko, former defensive coordinator, they still have talent. They played Notre Dame hard. I thought A&M was going to win this game. I just thought that they were too fast for Notre Dame. But it came down to a fourth quarter game, and Riley Leonard, Notre Dame, go into College Station, and on honeymoon night for Texas A&M, send Mike Elko home with his first loss of the season.
Yeah, I thought the atmosphere would be maybe a little bit too much. So on September 1st, Notre Dame's the first team in the college football playoff. I mean, I don't think we need to waste much more time on trying to figure out their path. That was their biggest game. It was
Yes.
the biggest stage they'll be on probably all year. And quite frankly, it was a significant win because their schedule gets a little more comfortable. And I'm impressed with Marcus Freeman. He manages this team very well, especially on the defensive side. They made some big stops, and I don't know enough. I mean, I think A&M looks like a good team. Their big game now is is in Gainesville in 2 weeks, because I mean they have to look at that as a great opportunity. So I yeah, that game probably never should have been as big as we made it, but there just wasn't much else yesterday, especially because most smart people, Matt, knew that the noon game would not be very close.
And that's an interesting way to put it, because I was being told by everyone, hey, no, Clemson, hey, they had a winning streak to end the season, that 9-win season. Dabo's got that thing running. They understand what Cade Klubnik is. Year 2, the new offensive coordinator. They've got a good defense. Georgia loses a bunch of guys to the NFL. And early on, I mean, 6-0, it was kind of a slop fest. You're watching. It's like, ooh, Georgia's got some new weapons they got to build in. Clemson's offenses look great, but the defense looks good. And then it's almost, you could probably find a Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate anywhere in the archives and show us saying, oh, Georgia started slow and like a boa constrictor wrapped themselves around your neck, and it ended up being a blowout. That was blueprint Georgia football, leaving Clemson again with answers.
I mean, I sat on the set Saturday morning saying what I'm saying now about Clemson, and a former Heisman Trophy winner, a guy that understands football better than the two of us combined, told me that Clemson is a great program, and this game will be very tight. And I just sat there and at that moment usually kept my mouth shut because I knew it wasn't a good idea. I knew what was going to happen, and so did you, Matt. And it's as much about how well Kirby Smart has control of that program as it is as to say that Dabo Swinney's time as an elite coach is over. Clemson is a good program. They'll compete in the ACC. But their days as a program that matters, their days as a program that is spoken with reverence are gone. Everyone knows what they've done, but they're not doing it this year, and I don't see them ever doing it again as long as Dabo Swinney is there. And I don't mean that the program isn't capable, but his approach to college football doesn't work any longer. And he's been slow to move for everything. He now has that reputation as grumpy Dabo, and I frankly think Dabo Swinney would be smart to start planning an exit strategy. I'm not saying they're getting rid of him; they're not. They're stuck with him. He's part of who they are. But he would be better to look elsewhere, to find another way to do it, because it's simply not going to matter. He may find ways into the playoff in the future, but he's not going to find a way to hold up the trophy any longer. Not the way he's running that program.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting, Paul, because Clemson seems to be the perfect place with the resources set up in the new era of the sport to say, hey, you know what? I need an offensive lineman. Boom, here's some money. Come to Clemson. I need a pass rusher. Boom, here's some money. I need a bona fide quarterback, a game-breaking receiver. And one level, I respect Dabo for saying, no, this is how I'm going to do it. This. But on the other, it's like, Dabo, you've got everything at your disposal to continue winning in this era, and he just refuses to do it.
Yeah, and do I think this was a pristine program too, Matt, where they really, one of these Ivy League type schools that really isn't Ivy League, but feels like they're Ivy League in the Big Ten or maybe out west. But Clemson's never had a problem going after a top flight player and doing whatever it would take to get that player. You know what I'm talking about. So I really just don't. Now that it's legal, they really don't want to do it anymore. It was much easier for Clemson to battle with the NCAA during the 80s, which cost them dearly, and countless other times. Now that Clemson has been told, whatever you want to spend, they suddenly have a coach who wants to practice some puritanical philosophy of purism, of being pure and high and mighty. It doesn't work. And I don't know how many times on Sunday morning we've had this conversation about Dabo, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse because he is a good football coach, but I mean, it's over, Dabo. I mean, this is not going to change. What you got yesterday, and by the way, you didn't even get an A effort from Georgia. I mean, that was it was methodical, but that was a pretty sloppy first half by Georgia.
Yeah.
What happens if they start clicking in the first quarter?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, 28 points in the second half. It was 6-0 at halftime. And you look at the box score and just the total offense. I mean, it just was not good from Clemson's perspective. 189 total yards with the second year offensive coordinator with Lincoln Riley's brother, Garrett Riley, coming in. I mean, it just look, and also look, Florida State lost their season opener. They could still run through the ACC. Clemson, I'm sure you could argue, could do the same. My playoff sneaky pick was Virginia Tech. Oops, they lose to Vanderbilt. So a lot of football left, and I'm with you right now. Clemson, from who they were to what they are now, we'll see how they develop coming out of Labor Day. The final thing I want to get to with you, Paul, because it hit out on a Thursday night because we had all this stuff to talk about. Colorado, Deion Sanders, 1-0. After North Dakota State. Deion comes to the podium afterwards and says, a lot of you were mad that we got this win. A lot of you wanted us to take that L. I don't know that I'd be thumping my chest about that win because there was a lot to be desired. But here's the two things you can't dispute. Travis Hunter's the best player in college football. Shador's a really good quarterback. But outside of that, I don't know much that we learned from Colorado's win over North Dakota State.
Well, we learned a couple of things. The public still has a great appetite for this show. And that's exactly what it is, Matt. It's a show and it's entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, there are variations of this, whether it's in the NBA, Caitlin in the WNBA. I mean, there are certain things in sports, Tiger back in his day, we just watch. And listen, I've had my issues with Deion Sanders recently over things he's done, but I was rooting for them. I was having fun watching. It was an exciting game. But what concerned me more than anything else was the way Deion coached the game down the stretch. Is he in control of the sidelines? Does Shador have the final word on everything? Because at a time, and I'm sure you thought of this, and I know others have said it, but at a time when you needed to run the clock out, I mean, they're just firing away, giving the opponent an opportunity to come back and win the game. They didn't, but I asked somebody like where would North Dakota State, for all the praise that we gave them and all their champions, where would they fit in the SEC? And they would be at the bottom of the SEC. I'm not saying that with bravado. I mean, they're 15 or 16 in that league. So what did Colorado really accomplish other than drawing a big audience for ESPN?
Yeah, and that you hit it on there. And as much as we like Deion for the what he brings to college football and the swagger that he brings, at the end of the day, you're a head coach. And there were things that were done at the end of that game where I believe if it was anybody else other than Deion, they would have been pounded over and over for some of the decisions they make. So again, you hit it. They're going to be a fun team to watch, but that game was made way too interesting, more interesting than it had to be. And Deion, for a guy that likes the spotlight, is going to have to look at himself and say, I put us in a position to maybe lose with some decisions that I made. I've got to take ownership of that. And I've got Nebraska next week, and that's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, it's so awkward to talk about Deion and the perceptions because we both work at ESPN, which is the single biggest reason why everybody knows who Deion is right now in college football, because we talk about it. I'm not blaming you, but I'm on some of these morning shows, and Deion is just another brand like LeBron and like Aaron and like Dak. It's a Deion segment, and you've hosted these shows recently, Matt. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it's going to be entertaining, as we hope this will be entertaining. This was cleansing for the soul. It's been months since we did this, but week one kind of in the books. Sunday, you got LSU, USC. Monday, you've got Florida State, Boston College. But here's what you have for certain. You got the Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate. Matt and Paul every Sunday morning. I am so glad to kick this off with you, Paul. Enjoy the rest of the 3-day week, and we'll do this again next week on the Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate.
I might turn to lose, I might work a lot.